I'm going to open this video with a little tidbit by 65-year-old edgelord Piero Scaruffi. It's titled The Meaning of Art and goes as follows. The value of art depends on the values of the art critic. Most art is born as imitation, not innovation. The critic, not the artist, is the one who defines innovation and rates it. The artist is merely a vehicle for the aesthetic or ideology of the critic. The critic is the real artist. Now I open with this because I want you guys to understand that there are critics who unironically believe this. They genuinely think that not only are they the rightful gatekeepers of art, but that they direct it and mold it to their liking, and thus they deem themselves the real creators and artists. Now I realize that any rational human being will recognize that this is some next level bullshit, but I think I still need to elaborate on why that's so, lest someone accuses me of seething or trying to cope. Now the first point is ultimately false. I don't disagree that the hoi polloi are incapable of finding value in most art without some external help. It's very possible to gaslight people into thinking a particular piece of art is good or bad. For example, how many people do you think dislike Nickelback while simultaneously regarding bands like Pearl Jam or Foo Fighters in high esteem? After all three of those bands are a joke, and yet the general consensus is that only one of them is. The truth is that in the modern age, the value of art is determined by what is most profitable and what is best marketed. Popularity begets commendations, which beget popularity. I can guarantee that a lot of people will disagree with me when I say that Trap Mask Replica isn't a good album, and that it's not a masterpiece. They've been conditioned to believe that the album is good, and so they've listened to it so many times that they've finally convinced themselves that it's a good album, when in reality it's utter shit. I could say why the album isn't good, and I could elaborate on that, but it would be in vain because reviews, criticisms, and arguments pale in comparison to the power of the crowd. That is, all my arguments would be in vain, because the majority opinion has spoken. I am wrong. There is no way to refute that. In general, what is popular is what is valued. And thus it's really marketing teams that get to determine what is and isn't valued by the majority. Critics and academics like Scaruffi play a very small role in what people enjoy. At most they might be able to expose their audience to, say, a Death Grips or a Have a Nice Life, but they cannot compete against the fusillade of new acts being launched by the music industry each and every day. The next point he makes is still false. Art is a medium for the artist to communicate his interpretation of the world. Calling art an imitation of the real thing is like calling my voice an imitation of me. It's an extension of me, a part of me. It's, in some sense, an image of me, but it's not an imitation. My voice is not trying to imitate the thoughts I have in my head. It is trying to communicate them. Likewise, the purpose of art is not imitation. Rather, art serves as a medium for the artist to communicate his feelings and emotions with the world. It serves as a way for us to perceive the world through the artist's mind. The best art is a subjective display of the artist's most private and intimate thoughts. The best art leaves its maker vulnerable, not because he fears criticism of the art's quality, but because his art removes his opaque exterior and reveals him for what he really is. The best art can take some facet of life and portray it as something beautiful. It gives us a new perspective to view life from, so that in our lowest moments, art still makes life something worth living. It gives us the tools to see our own lives as a masterpiece, irrespective of your circumstances. The difference between art and entertainment can thus be found right here. Good art changes our perception of the world. It stays with us even when it's not there. Good entertainment, on the other hand, is entertaining so long as it is right before you. You may enjoy watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine or The Big Bang Theory. You may laugh at the funny jokes and feel for the funny characters. But once the TV is off, you go back into life, and nothing has changed. Truly incredible art, such as Jove's Cove, stays with you, even after the music stops. Yes, it is beautiful as you listen to it, but it's more than that. It's a story of humanity. It touches on philosophical ideas from new angles. It delves deep into the human condition and various emotions, ultimately leaving you with a new perspective that will let you see and feel more beauty in the world than before. The third dot point he makes is kind of null. The critic cannot truly define innovation. Innovation is innovative so far as it is novel to a particular person. I could show my boomer parents any number of songs that would fall under a category of novel genres to them, and they would consider that to be innovative. Whatever I choose to show them will forever be in their minds the original blank core song, blank core being the name of whatever genre I happen to show them. I guess I can elucidate what I mean with an example. When I first listened to Radiohead's OK Computer, I was probably about 16, and the album was the same age at that time. Thus, in this 16-year time span, I got to listen to a lot of 2000s rock that was undeniably inspired by OK Computer. The critic can say that Radiohead were innovative, and that the album really shifted the rock scene forever afterwards, but to me, because I listened to it so long after it had been made, the songs all sounded derivative to me. Even if you can prove that this album was the very first of its kind, which I doubt is possible, I will never be emotionally convinced that it's anything but derivative. The critic's words are unable to move me. Thus, the critic can define innovation to the same extent that I can tell you red is blue and blue is green. I may convince you to start calling red by the name blue, but you will still always see red. You can put labels on things and say that X is the original Y, but no matter how mellifluously the words roll off your tongue, you, as a critic, cannot transfer your emotions and feelings to me, because that's something of which only an artist is capable. The idea that the artist is a vehicle for the critic's aesthetic or ideology is laughable. How does the critic even develop an aesthetic or ideology independent of artists? Everyone knows that critics become critics because they have nary a creative bone in their body. Anthony Fantano, for example, makes absolutely horrible music. He makes it under the facade that it's jocular meme music, but in reality, he's just a really uncreative, boring, talentless person. Or at least he has been ever since he canned That Is the Plan. His one good quality, however, which is true of most bugmen and music critics alike, is that he's well disciplined. He's very good at listening to a multitude of albums and filming himself spilling his thoughts on them. I will genuinely say that I couldn't do what he does. I couldn't think of a more miserable existence than listening to music, day in, day out, only to tell an audience of brain-dead dolts what you think of it, who then completely ignore anything that you have to actually say about it and just look at the little number you give it. At that point, you may as well just be a puppet for the music industry, giving airtime to whatever top 40s album they ask you to review, and simultaneously discouraging independent artists such as Paysage Divers by giving them unjustifiably negative reviews. And this is the crux of the point I want to make. Critics like Scaruffi and Fantano are not really artists, they're just prolific. If you were an artist, people would listen to what you have to say, but as it stands, you're a number generator. The reason why people don't listen to what you have to say is because you know very little about music composition, theory, production, literature, and lyricism. It's because your understanding of art is that it's something that lets your brain have dopamine. You can't describe the way that a major fourth resolution brings about a sense of nostalgia, nor could you describe the way a key change was the cause of tension in a piece. You could probably recognize the nostalgia and the tension, but you lack the fundamental tools and ability to produce them yourself. If you could, you would be the vehicle of your own ideologies and make your own music and art. As it stands, you're a hitchhiker, not a driver. You want to get from point A to point B, fair enough, but you'll have to make compromises, because you lack the ability to drive. You can pretend that you are the one who directed the artist to point B, but he was headed there all along, independent of you. You can even pay a ghostwriter or a taxi to make your perfect song, but you'll never be the one driving. You're too old and too talentless to ever drive, you blithering old dotard. Do these hacks really think that musicians aren't themselves critics? Do they think that the entire life of a musician is that he sees what other people like and does the same because he wants fame or money? The primary reason I started making music was because there was a little sound in my head that I wanted to flesh out and make as tangible as physically possible. There was a little sound in my head that I couldn't hear anywhere else, or at least I couldn't find anyone else who was making the same sounds. I really wanted to hear the rich sounds of my mind, physically and properly. It wasn't about fame, and sure, I might market my music in a silly fashion, but that's more an inside joke with myself. The idea of me getting big is like Plankton finally getting the Krabby Patty secret formula. It will not and should not ever happen, it's just a funny idea to me. At the end of the day, I'm content because I make music to drive to my own destinations. I am my own vehicle for my aesthetic and ideology, and I can make my own 10 out of 10 album. Meanwhile, Scaruffi needs to rely on someone else to make the music he wants, although I can guarantee that he wouldn't be able to tell you what it is that he would actually want from a 10 out of 10, despite the fact that he's meant to be directing artists towards that perfect score. The critic is therefore not the real artist. They might try gatekeep before a large audience, but there will always be people who fall through the cracks. There will always be those who disagree with you, Scaruffi. You are not good at what you do, you are just prolific. You just have enough good fortune to have fallen into a position where you make enough money to keep this little hobby of yours going. One day you and I will both die. Your art, however, will be defaced and forgotten. Someone new will take the reins of music critic, and they will have their own opinions, independent of yours, on what art is valuable and what is not. In that moment, everything you've worked for will be for nothing, because someone else will have come and overthrown your values. By your own argument. Meanwhile, real art will continue unchanged. Tchaikovsky's works will still exist as incredible masterpieces. Anna Karenina will remain one of the greatest novels of all time. Michelangelo's David will continue to be reproduced ad nauseum in every middle-class family's backyard. But you, my friend, you will be irrelevant, because what you make is not art. It is at best entertainment. Hey guys! What did you think of that analysis? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What did you rate? I'm just shitting you.